very tired of attending, like some of these events where our Kenyan, like Kenyan Chamber of Commerce comes, or maybe just different, like maybe government entities.
Correct.
Where they're coming here to look for business. They, like they look at us as a nuisance. And I feel like
Correct.
sometimes they come without a plan. I mean, you see like
Checkbox.
you
Per
see,
diem
you see like
checkbox.
what Hila was saying, like he knew specifically, like the contacts that he was coming to meet, there's a proper plan.
I would not necessarily discourage anyone from business, but like I already said, that it just needs you to have some systems that will allow you to be able to move on through. Because in as much as there's been all this taxation, the positive story that not so many people are talking about is that we had a 5.7% growth in the last year. Right after the election, it was only at 4%, it's gone to 5.7%. And the projections are, things are going on through. So despite
areas where Kenyans are invested in, and I think Hila mentioned areas like farming, which is becoming dicey, real estate. Which other areas do you guys think Kenyans are invested in Kenya outside the traditional real estate?
I would say specialty
if you'd be looking at an area to place in opportunity, which is definitely gaining a lot of ground. Now I'll talk about maybe if people have a huge appetite for mega infrastructure projects, energy generation. So there's already a very critical amount of wind power that Kenya is exporting into southern bit of Ethiopia and Sudan. But I met up a couple of guys also keen on trying to consolidate what they've had, they've built up in the US for a while. They have a very interesting energy project they're trying to place up, splitting hydrogen, which apparently produces a lot more energy than hydro. But of course, there'll be a couple of hoops. We'll need to be able to speak with the relevant fellows. So the country is definitely still hungry for mega projects. So if you are working with a conglomerate or high net worth individuals who are looking at placing some infrastructure projects, particularly trying to target the health segment for transformative growth, and there's a level of reception that you can go around and get with foreign partners and energy, but that talks towards the big pushing ones. But at this point in time, if you're to rate it, I would look at trying to tap in on short stay options across the traditional tourism sides. I would not necessarily discourage anyone from business, but like I already said, that it just needs you to have some systems that will allow you to be able to move on through. Because in as much as there's been all this taxation, the positive story that not so many people are talking about is that we had a 5.7% growth in the last year. Right after the election, it was only at 4%, it's gone to 5.7%. And the projections are, things are going on through. So despite the fact that there's a very aggressive collection of taxes and people are feeling the pinch, there's still opportunities on a business perspective, become niche. There's definitely a lot of potential to be able to go around and get curious in. I mean, I've been in Atlanta for about a week, and I'd like to agree with Omosh. Benny has actually also taken me up and about. So there's a lot of activity. I met a lady who's doing leather bags, manufacturing them in Nairobi,
Yes,
and importing them into the US.
Eva.
I think I know.
And the bags are not going in for anything less than about $200. So
Yeah,
there is
very
opportunity.
high quality bags. too.
Very high quality bags.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is opportunity. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you could go around and sell the items in Kenya, but what she's doing is something that is, I think, really transformational. She has actually set up a manufacturing site, but her target market is in the US. So there are opportunities to go around and try and also empower the people back home while also tapping into your market in Kenya here. So in the US here.
So Hila, for something like that, would if one were to try to go through and do the same sort of thing, where would the Chamber of Commerce come in? Because you came in on an American Chamber of Commerce initiative. Does that mean that you then liaised with the Kenya Chamber of Commerce, or was it the Nairobi Chamber of Commerce, or the International Chamber of Commerce?
So very, very, very great question. There's normally a trade attaché at each and every consul mission across the world. And the American Chamber of Commerce is basically an organization that has a dotted line to the American embassy that looks at opportunities that can be tapped into. The one disappointing thing that I picked up in the time that I was around, it would appear that it was a bulk of the Kenyans who traveled from Nairobi to the US who had the chance to mint the opportunities and get a chance to understand where to plug in. But I got the feeling that the diaspora, the diasporans in the US didn't get a chance to go around and talk. Now, you guys have been in the US for a while. There's been something that has been in existence for over a decade, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA.
Yeah,
Correct.
Where the United States basically says that they don't have the ability, or they do not believe that they'd be able to go around and get some of these particular products sold into the US because the cost of labor is quite expensive. So if you're already in the US, you received a level of grounding. The first point to be able to look at a business that you can still go around and offload some of those products in the US will be the African Growth and Opportunities Act. And then in some instances, leather products are a big deal in this country. And AGOA provides African businesses the chance to be able to go around and get that into this part. There are also, I think, some select skins, I think snake hide, alligator hide, etc. If you want to go around and link up with guys at Mamba Village and tell them kichinja Mamba, mimi nitabeba ngozi nilete hapa. But there's opportunity.
Yeah.
But it would just be a matter of being able to understand what sort of trade arrangements are already there. Because if you're looking at then having that business, tapped into the US market because you already got grounding, you already have the contacts, there are opportunities on that front. But that would require you to maybe look at what sort of concessions countries like Kenya have, where your target market would be, such that you then have the ability to create a manufacturing site. It doesn't have to be big and etc., but you then get the items into the US and you now manage your business in the US, but the products are made in Kenya. That actually has an effect of being able to also improve the lots of people, because unemployment remains a big issue in Kenya, while also tapping into your networks in the US.
So, Hilai, are you saying that those sorts of initiatives are where you would run to the Chamber of Commerce, the local
Chamber of Commerce? That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. I have the contacts. If anyone is interested, I have the number of the CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce. I have the number of one of the trade attaches in there, who also went to that grade school. I will not say which one it is, I think, but they already mentioned it. But if anyone is interested, I'm more than willing to go around and share the contacts so that anyone who's listening into the show, who's keen on it, can actually get the assistance required. And they tend to be very, very responsive, very responsive.
Now, one thing, Hila, I will say that with these meetings that the chambers of commerce do, there's the American Chamber of Commerce and there's the Kenyan Chamber of Commerce. A lot of these meetings, I feel like they sometimes tend to become, for lack of a better word, like a good vibes event. Because a lot of people who go there, you're asking a question, like, okay, please come tell us what you gathered from there. And they actually have nothing to tell you. They have pictures on Instagram, they have pictures on social media, but they have nothing to tell you. Especially now let me not necessarily put it on the Chamber of Commerce. Let me just say the overall, because now there was a mix of a lot of people. The overall contingent that came with the president, I mean, of course, there was a mix-up with the Chamber of Commerce. There were so many things that happened, but there was no clear place to go and see this is what was happening here for people who are not physically there. So, and when you ask people, it's kind of like they don't know what to tell you.
Let me add something over here, and I think maybe that's the. Are you talking about Maxwell Okello?
Yes.
So Maxwell Okello was being interviewed. I did not know about this, but there's the American Chamber of Commerce, the Kenyan chapter. He's the one who heads it.
Okay.
He was being interviewed on Spice.
Oh yeah.
And
the one who was saying is not Okello Max.
Yes, that one.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and it's interesting how I think the representation of about 250 plus companies in there. Mm-hmm. But apparently with AGOA, we've only managed to do what, 9%, or is it 16%? It's a very, very small.
It's very small, yeah.
That is correct. Now,
very small.
I will seek to answer your question, Badawi, and I hope I'll be satisfactory in my response.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned about the Chamber of Commerce. So I have gone into forums of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, What they basically do, I'm sorry to say this, and I know I've got a couple of friends in there, they're a talk shop. I've gone for a couple of KEPSA sessions. I'm sorry to also say they're a talk shop. The differentiator that I've gotten with the American Chamber of Commerce Kenya chapter is that they have all of, I think, close to 300 members in there. And they break down the members into their various industry lines. So you'll get one for financial services, you'll get one for extractives, minerals and extractives, you'll get one for logistics and supply chain. And then these small cohorts would actually then be asked. There's a session to go to San Francisco, as was the case in September last year, or Washington, D.C., as the case was in March. What sort of people are you looking at trying to get? So they ask you this about a month or two in advance. And then they basically go around and reach out to their counterparts in the US and say, fine, we've got these various sub-segments from Kenya. Which particular sort of people and at what scale would you like to meet? By the time I was actually getting in to the American Chamber of Commerce on the Friday, 24th of May, I already had a hit list of who I was going to talk to. So they make it, easier to go and have the conversations so that you don't just necessarily sit around in a crowd, take your cup of tea or coffee, eat an apple and say, I feel good vibes and
Good vibes.
good vibes and inshallah, you
Yeah.
know. But the plug that they need to be able to do is to also understand if they, for instance, are coming to Atlanta next year or they're going to Los Angeles, have they been able to tap into understanding what the Kenyan community would be interested in? Because we can talk about people reading the AGOA Act right now, knowing what the opportunities are. But do they have the ability to liaise? And this becomes a bit dicey because they're the American Chamber of Commerce, but they're seeking to understand what the Kenyans in the US are doing. This is where the interplay with the Kenyan embassy missions should come through and tell them up in advance. The feeling that I got was that the foreign mission in here was very concerned about the red carpet that they'd be giving to VIPs, being able to get them vehicles, but I don't get the feeling that they tapped into the local community to tell them, so you guys have been here for a while. What opportunities are you looking at? Because we have this list of people coming to Kenya. Who do you think you can actually collaborate with so that you can actually get, some level of mutual benefit? I think that is the last plug that needs to be placed there, because I can tell you, from the guys that I've had a chat with who came in from Kenya to the US, they're happy. I am personally happy about the contacts that I made, but I cannot necessarily say the same about the Kenyans based in the US who attended those particular forums.
Wow. I mean,
Read Benny's comment, which is quite interesting.
yes. So let me see. Where's Benny's comment? It says the issue is those in the chamber across the pond don't see the diaspora Kenyans as a resource, audience or market to do business. Basically, they want to deal with the Wazungus and not us. And that's what we got from the business expo that was in Atlanta, which almost you attended.
Yeah, it was a week-long expo. We really didn't know about it. It was run by the Kenya Chamber of Commerce. There were guys who were behind that. And there was actually a lot of networking one could do if you went there and had the program and knew what was going on, because they had people in textiles, people in ICT, people in banking, financial, government, long-term, stock options. What did they call that thing? The CBK were there.
Yeah.
They had a bunch of people in there. I mean, I as well as the Diaspora Affairs Ministry. So, and these were, part of the exhibitors or the people who were there and you could network with, and they're telling you what the products are. Folks selling Maploti. They had various different folks within this space. I think SAFCOM were there as well and had representation, because the SAFCOM CEO was around as well during that, for at least that duration. Not sure if Vivo was there, but I know Vivo, again, back to AGOA. Vivo is a recipient of AGOA, so they came to the US via AGOA. There's other, and then what they've done is partnered with other smaller companies that are producing different things, because Vivo is basically textiles. So they do have someone who they are partnering with who does leather. There's another person who does household goods. There's another person who does, so they have different various things. Whatever it is that they are not jewelry, the other things that they are not touching, they actually are liaising with other folks. And that's what makes up the Vivo store right now in Atlanta. And so as folks start to figure out the AGOA thing, then they'll get into, trying to figure out, okay, how do I get into AGOA? And back to what Mika was talking about with the PIN number, paying KRA, blah, 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 all of that. If you're not in good standing with KRA, you will not be able to slip through the AGOA. You need to bring your stuff this way, tax-free.
Yeah, so you see, I think part of the reason that made me, very tired of attending, like some of these events where our Kenyan, like Kenyan Chamber of Commerce comes, or maybe just different, like maybe government entities,
Correct.
where they're coming here to look for business. They, like they look at us as a nuisance, and I feel like
Correct.
sometimes they come without a plan. I mean, you see, like
Checkbox.
yeah, you
Per
see,
diem
yeah, you
and
see, like
checkbox.
what Hila was saying. Like he knew specifically, like the contacts that he was coming to meet. There's a proper plan. My, my mom, before she retired, she worked for the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi for so many years, and I would see, like her meticulous planning. She was involved in travel planning for now America. Like different people in different government entities in the U.S. who are coming to Kenya for specific things, and she used to have very detailed plans. Now later on is when like I'm remembering, like she would even carry like work back home,
Correct.
because of the details like of who they're gonna meet, like exactly what's needed for the meeting.
And sometimes you would get a call because of the time difference, and you need to fill those calls and fill in the blanks, or say,
Yes.
okay, here's where we are, this is what we did, this is what we
Yes.
decided, and we've booked A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so that person is on travel or transit, here's how the things are going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's already activity well before that meeting happens. So by the time the meeting is happening, there's so much work that has been done, such that that meeting is just it's just like conclusion.
Correct.
Like we're just concluding and we're gonna move forward. But with our Kenyan counterparts, unfortunately, it's the opposite. When you're meeting, it's like a speed dating event. Hi, hello, I am Kamau, or I am Joroge. And that's where the conversation starts and it ends there. Maybe you exchange contacts, but there's nothing meaningful. And then the other problem is that people in Kenya like traveling. Like it's a favorite pastime. Maybe taught from up above with the president. Everybody else likes traveling, so sometimes people are just coming
Ali,
here.
I think you need to give context to that, but that's okay.
Please,
Go
because
ahead.
maybe you traveled.
No,
Some
people.
of us didn't
No,
travel.
when he's saying traveling, he's talking about per diem.
No, yeah, people
Government
coming,
officials.
Yes,
He's talking
government
about per
officials.
diem.
Yeah,
Period.
Talk
yeah,
about that.
yeah, just coming here.
And
like,
it's not only government officials.
I understand that.
It's folks
Even
in
private.
companies, folks
Even
in
folks in the
whatever.
private
It's
sector,
per
yeah.
diem. Pretty much, let's look for something we can go do or have a meeting outside the country.
And there's a proposal to up the per diem from 2,000 to 5,000. Carry on.
Anyway, that's a long story, But yeah, I hope we're just gonna get to a point where, like we'll start professionalizing this. The negotiation, like there was a U.S. Kenya free trade agreement, and maybe Hila, you might pick out a comment or two. I have noticed under the Biden administration, they have realized that they can buy Kenyans for cheap, because that trade agreement, that free trade agreement, it's been put on the side. Now they're giving us something different that's called STIP. That's not even a permanent, because a trade agreement is permanent. So your trade agreement ni kama imekuwa kando, like a joker that I think Biden is putting on his chest to use at a later date, because there are so many things that he wants to get from Kenya, and he realized, if I pull this joker right now, like things may not work out my way. So let me give them breadcrumbs kidogo hapa na pale, and then we'll pick this up.
Kuna joka na hiyo, kuna hizo tatu, pick 2, pick 3.
Yes, so
I hate it that Ali has been right so far about this.
And you see the problem, and for me, I'm just looking at how the US government operates. One thing, in as much as Genocide Joe, like has a lot of issues going on his plate,
We'll be blackballed. He's
a political giraffe, like in as much as we, like I'm at a point where, for me personally, I'm no longer supporting him, and Trump people don't ever think we will ever support Trump. That's never gonna happen. But he's a guy who looks very forward. As sleepy as he looks on this Kenyan situation, because I've been monitoring it for a very, very long time. From the moment when they took that trade agreement and waka feature joker, and now they're only using pick 2s and pick 3s. And I personally thought that this trip that Ruto came, I'd already said I don't think the trade agreement will be signed, but I thought that maybe
there'll be some
maybe I
movement.
might be wrong on this. Maybe this is where they're planning
Or
to
at least
come.
even some movement or
crystallize
something.
it.
something.
So maybe just to give a bit of context. So AGOA has been around for perhaps a decade
20
or
years.
so.
20 something years.
20
It's
years.
been around for a long time.
Yeah, Clinton.
Sunsetting.
It was a
It's sunsetting.
Clintonian program.
Yeah, but the biggest problem that most organizations in Africa have not been able to unplug is understanding the regulation, particularly in a standards perspective, of products that need to get into the American market. And, every so often things actually brought or standards are placed in. And, we do not locally have the ability to understand how to get a clear understanding from the American counterpart so that we can actually align on that quality. So the people who potentially would benefit the most from the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA, would be people who are domiciled in the US, because you quickly be able to go around and cross-reference and then be able to link up with Kenyan partners who will be able to do the manufacturing. The AFCFTA you're talking about, that's the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement.
Yeah.
It's actually a brainchild that is being pushed by the African Union. And what they're saying is that, so we've got lots of products ranging from horticultural products that, for instance, flowers coming in from Kenya into the UK, into Holland. We've got coffee, we've got tea. And because traditionally we've been able to understand what the quality mandates are, we already have a channel that works. But what AFCFTA, the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, is trying to do is to try and break out these silos that we've been having in Africa. In East Africa, the East African Community, we've got the SADC in the Southern region, we've got ECOWAS in West Africa. Say, hang on, guys. Why would you want to go around and increase the ability for you to generate revenue? But if I'm moving items from Nairobi into Dar es Salaam, there are like 1,000,001 loops that I need to get into. Why would you want to go around and limit my ability to trade from Kenya to Ethiopia and be basically sharing a border because they're different ones? So I'm saying, hang on. To actually create one vibrant Africa. So they've gone back to what Muammar Gaddafi was envisioning more than 30, 40 years ago. We need to be able to actually agree if it's textiles. This is what will basically require, and it's going to be a standard across all the countries in
continent,
Africa.
yeah.
If it is curio, this is a basic minimum standard. Then if we can then open up those opportunities within our continent, we then have the ability to now influence foreign standards that are being given. Because if the US then go around and realize that, okay, all the countries, 50 plus countries in Africa have got similar standards. If we really want to get these African products, and these guys have it already going on and it's working, maybe let's go around and change our baseline for standards into what AFCFTA is working, because they're already doing it in Africa. But in there lies the issue, because I think there's a problem in Africa. The problem is that when you start feeling that your neighbor will benefit more than you, you'll try and stall the process. But if you look at it just as a tabletop exercise, if AFCFTA would have the ability to unlock a lot more trade in Africa, and in a sense also then get any other trading bloc partner, be they from Europe, from Asia, or from the Americas, to now say, hang on, these guys already have their standards, they're already thriving. We actually yearn for their products because they're niche products. Let's plug into it.
Wow, I mean, this is quite interesting conversation, and I think these are the opportunities that people in the diaspora need to be looking at, because we are also not very familiar with a lot of these opportunities that exist from the American government that we can take advantage of, because I think these are the opportunities that will give us good returns and not what everybody else is running to do. So I think these are the things that people need to be looking at. A couple of comments have been coming in, for quite a while while we're having the conversation. People have been, talking back and forth.
By the way, Udi is mad. Joey, I'm giving a big shout out to Joey.
Okay.
Joey, mother.
Sawa. And then I think, the comments are coming before. Afro-Jamaican says, no, some countries have a double taxation policy with different countries. Jamaica and Canada has one. If I pay taxes in Canada, I don't even have to file taxes in Jamaica. In Jamaica, I am listed as a non-domicile. So I have opted out of the tax system, and you can even opt out of the Canadian tax system. Find out if Kenya has that arrangement. Where I would love to know that, because I will swiftly opt out even before opting in. But
Ali, you can't opt out. You own like mega land.
Yeah. So
Unless you sign it over to the show, we'll do interviews there.
Okay, let me see. Benny Diongo here saying vendors are always welcome. This is in reference to Cape Fear Sevens.
Yes.
We have to go through the host of the tournament, Cape Fear RFC. know your audience for your product or services. And then I can see Afro-Jamaican says expats are buying land and opening SMEs in Kenya. So,
Correct. He's very
yes.
right.
So yes, and that's
It's a
the reason
ton
why.
of them.
That's the reason why. In as much as I encourage people to take full advantage of opportunities here before going to Kenya, I'll never be part of that team that says never invest in Kenya, because you have people who've been frustrated who say never invest in Kenya. But the reason why I'll never be part of that team is because I see foreigners, I see Arabs, I see Chinese, I see Americans.
Ali wako ngapi
Yeah,
huko kwenyu?
wako wengi sana.
And they
whenever you
marry
see-
a local girl, and so they get citizenship while they are in the same process investing in this place, and they have retired there.
whenever you see these people, it means that they're businesses that are making very good returns.
Correct.
So we just need to figure out what these opportunities are. And here Stephen JJ is saying hydrogen is very combustible. I think this was in reference to what Hila was saying earlier.
About
Hapo lazima extreme care. We have been trying to move away from helium as it is becoming very rare. Hydrogen iko na resistance bado juu ya hiyo nature yake. Extreme care has to be taken. Hapa Hila, we have some experts in the industry, and this is where some of these chambers of commerce in Kenya, when they come here, they don't take advantage, because we have
they don't.
experts like in Stephen JJ, we have experts like in Wanjeri, we have experts even here in the studio.
Yeah, in
who do-
different
different
fields.
industries.
Yes, and they don't. That's what Hila was saying.
Yes.
It's like the diaspora are like a checkbox.
Yes, they're like a checkbox, like they're like a nuisance. But anyway,
It's like the Rooney Rule.
yes,
Just interview a black guy and then hire a
And
white
then
guy,
hire a white guy, yeah.
as a head coach.
and then
That's right. I said it.
Edwin Odipo says, who was the link person here in the US? I think
That is pertaining to the
To which one? To,
to-
the Chamber of
to the
Commerce,
Chamber of
to
Commerce,
the Expo.
to the whatever. What Hila
or-
brought.
yeah, because Edwin
He said
Odipo
the
is saying
trade,
people
the
were
trade
very,
representative at the embassy,
he's saying
right?
Yes.
Edwin Odipo is saying people were very secretive with information, which
He
is also
actually
problematic.
is very right. And what we have found a lot of times, like especially with this, in the case where when the president was coming over, everything was quote unquote being run from Nairobi, and the folks from Nairobi were holding everything in their pocket.
Yes.
Yes.
Then they check, then they see, okay, does this guy meet our nini apana Z? They say nothing.
even
And then
the
they were
embassy.
splitting
Yeah.
the way information was coming out. So no one guy knew anything.
Even the embassy, because
Even the embassy wasn't familiar.
No.
Did not know what was going
it
on.
was
Udi was complaining one
It
time
was
because he was
sad.
like, by the way, on my Kati, this guy's coming to Atlanta. I'm like, yeah, but do you have any other information? I'm like, no.
We don't.
All the information that we have is right there on the website. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that we were knowing. We didn't know where.
You know,
There was no game plan.
For
I
me,
told you guys we were fed.
Yes.
They fed about 1,000 people on day one. About 1,000 folks were fed on day one.
now you
No
see-
asking you CG Nini, no checking in, nothing, no CG at the way everybody signs up and CG
Yeah, no.
zero. We day one at the expo. Ask Benny. We were fed. In fact, there was too much food. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, so anyway, Benny says the issue in those in the chamber across the pod don't see the diaspora as
Yeah,
a
you
resource.
read that,
I think we already read that comment. Ndunge karibu sana to the One Mic Show. Washeke here says, I have had this comment from African Americans as well. This thing of the officials coming from Kenya just wanting to meet white people. And I think this is something that has to be spoken about. And it was the issue also when they were launching KQ out here. The biggest clientele anytime when you go to a KQ flight is Kenyans, but they are not coming to Kenya.
How much information were we even told?
Yeah.
We did not know.
There was no information.
You
And
remember?
we just saw water on the plane.
Do you remember Dinner for
That's
Champions?
it.
Yeah.
They have a North American chapter. Had you ever heard about
Magical Kenya.
Magical Kenya
No,
having a North
never.
American chapter?
Never. Anyway, and then I see here Udimadenga says, can we start making travel across Africa easier? Very true. That's something that I think Wanjeri has a lot to say about.
They're trying to work on it.
Yeah, they're
but
trying to work on it, but it's still not where it's
until
supposed
they
to
get
be.
to that whole visa thing and
Yeah.
passports, and then this embassy, these guys allowing you to do this. And if you watch a lot of the YouTubers who travel within Africa, the stories are sad, and especially when they're not even flying but driving at the border points, and you can sit for 2 days before you're allowed in. And it's supposed to be like you have the right passport. You're not supposed to be asked for a visa, but it's a 2-day process of sitting over there because other than ule mtu anataka kitu kidogo, the other guy who's supposed to get kitu kidogo has not come, shift si yake. So nikaa uko hapo unamngojea ndi hizi pesa zipeanwe. So what you go through.
Okay. And then here Benny says AGOA is scheduled to expire next year, September 30th, 2025.
Yeah,
this is another
it's to be extended.
This is another
supposedly.
joker. This is another joker that Genocide Joe, that guy,
Ali, just say the guy is politically savvy.
that guy, like I don't know, like this is another joker is holding close. I mean, he has details on very small issues you think he's not paying attention to, and I don't know. Africans are gonna get screwed. Africans are gonna get screwed because I think even part of the reason why there was a pause in the trade agreement, there was, I think, also a lot of questions that were coming up on how it was clashing with local agreements, local trade agreements, ESC, SADC, like other trade agreements that Kenya is part of.
But wasn't Moses Kuria the initial guy who was supposed to be handling that contract?
Yes, but guess what they did?
Wow.
The U.S. trade representative demanded that they don't want Moses, and that's a power they are wielding. They demanded that they don't want to deal with that guy.
But the question is, what exactly was? Why did they not want to deal with Moses Kuria? Because on the outside is probably he was sending a bad career, but maybe inside he was probably
they're like this chap.
We cannot take advantage of this guy.
No. What are they?
I'm just
like,
guessing here.
If he goes in there, it will be his agreement. It won't be Kenya's. It will be his agreement.
Yes. So you see, and I think that's part of the problem, because now we're in a situation where we are negotiating, but we are very disadvantaged in this negotiation. When you look at the people on the team of the U.S. trade representative side, my goodness, you're looking at the experience they have. Some of them have experience in Africa. Some of them are working as diplomats in Africa. Some of them have experience working for years in WTO. Some of them have very intimate knowledge of Kenya and what we're looking for.
Correct.
But on the other side, we have let me not even
we
say.
need people who understand food security, guys who understand agriculture, guys who understand energy, guys who understand financial, guys who are from economic standpoint, health. All of these things are things that you have opportunity to throw in there. The same way when you have a state visit, you're given a blank canvas, then you say what you want. That's basically it. Am I lying, Ali?
Yes, that's you're given a blank canvas.
It's a blank canvas.
So when they look
and you say what
like,
you want.
It's kind of like being given a job offer, and we have career expert Tabitha here can tell us. You're given a job offer, wanakuambia mshahara ni 100K. Their expectation. This is something that I didn't know before I attended Tabitha's classes. You're offered 100K. Their expectation is that you negotiate. Like upon 100K, Toshi. But then when you say, I am happy, give me the 100K, they'll be like, okay.
So be it.
Yeah, so be it. So that's kind of, like the situation.
She's right. I got like another, when I was interviewing, I got like another 10K on top of like what they offered me. I was like, bana, you guys, and right now I'm still even again in negotiations again because it's that time. But, again, everything depends on where you're going in. Is it a small company? Can you get stock options? Can you get this? If you don't get this, then can you get that? If you don't, you know what I'm saying? So you look at the entire picture. Are you getting time off of work? Are you getting sick pay? Are you getting whatever? And all of those things equate to money, which you add to your overall package. So some of these are the things that people need to think about when they're going in and negotiating on monies. Maybe there's tuition reimbursement and you care more about school than that money you're going to take home. So you say, okay, fine, I'll do the school. Let me sort that thing out. It gives me ability to go and get a promotion elsewhere or go in and negotiate for now a managerial level job because that's the minimum requirement they're saying I need to enter with.
Okay. Now, Udi's saying, why do we need Americans to help us? Yet a Kenyan has so much hard to travel to DA Angola. Your statement sijaelewa. Udi rewrite that statement. And then, of course, Benidionga said AGOA is scheduled to expire next year in September. And then, let me see, Udi says, say I couldn't get a visa to Equatorial Guinea. but had to use my US passport. Very sad. And then Washeke here says, during those clubhouse days, there was a Sudanese British who works within the UK trade, and she lamented how our government officials are always ill-equipped to negotiate. They are easily impressed by dinners, palace tours, and concede too much. And by the way, Americans do this deliberately. Whenever you see this red carpet, this razzmatazz, it is very deliberate. They know you'll get very excited. You'll be sending those pictures back home. But in the meantime, while weko kando, they are busy screwing you pole pole.
Yeah, I'll even put you up in the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
At $400 a night.
Bila Lube. And we can see over there what Slay is saying.
Yeah. And Slay is saying, tuning in bright and early from Nairobi. Karibu sana Slay. Thank you for tuning in all the way.
Brown envelope na
No
Maldives.
wonder huyu mtu I have not been nimekuwa nikiangalia nyuma ya tent naonekani.
Yeah.
Kumbe this is what's
Ni zile pesa
brown envelope money.
brown envelope money na hiyo
brown
Maldives.
envelope money to her.
But ni sawa tu
Indio
kadhaa.
Maldives. Indio Maldives.
Mika was right.
Slay.
Endelea tu
Slay,
kutunini.
don't reveal our secret.
Yeah, but anyway, Hila, before we get to talk about rugby, just give us a brief of honestly what you think, because you've been both sides. You've stayed for extended periods here with us, so you have an interesting perspective that most people in Kenya might not have about our lives here. So if I have, like my little savings, my 10,000, my 20,000, maybe even up to 50,000, if I'm not adept in whatever you said earlier in doing those businesses in Kenya, what would you advise? Do we take our money right now to Kenya, or do we stick with it here with what we know?
Avocados.
You have asked me a very antagonistic question, because one, I'm still very patriotic as a Kenyan. I would say there is still opportunities to go around and invest, but the bucket of opportunities is getting limited just because of the risk. One of the best ways to go around and plan and execute a business is when you're operating in a very stable business operating environment. And the last 18 months has not really been one of the most stable operating environments in Kenya. So you're limited on options to go around and pick in. What would I actually say, having been in Kenya and also having spent extended periods of time in the US? I think I don't want to go around and repeat myself and sound like a broken record. I think there's a lot more opportunity, and there's a lot more need to ensure that the same way these particular visits are organized from a Kenyan perspective, such that I'm actually going to speak to these four fellows, because the way, if you've been in sales, you've got a pipeline. There'll be what you'll actually call cold, warm, and really hot ones. So you limit your time to actually focus on the ones that will work. So the same sort of approach that is done from Kenya should actually be done in here. Now, whether that would be the embassy literally just coming in to own their space, or whether it would require someone who's strong enough and very influential locally across the various states that people operating in, that is, the jury is still out there. But I think the one thing that I have seen is the lack of the same level of opportunities being done to prepare well, particularly for the diasporans in the US to get in there. So yes, is opportunity? Yes. Is the bucket wide? I don't want to lie. It's not as wide, but there's still opportunity. Is there need to be able to ensure that there's razor sharp focus? When you're going to go around and hunt, you want to go around and, eat a gazelle. You don't go around and shoot in a place where there are buffaloes and saying that I'll pick something in there. You'll probably end up picking up a monitor lizard, which, yes, you've shot some game meat. In West Africa, that will be considered food, but you need to be able to ensure that you plan early enough so that you can get what you need. So I think those would be my comments on what you've actually asked.
And that's a very interesting perspective, because that's the same perspective that's used in a lot of marketing and sales teams out here in the US, because I've done a lot of training. Like, you have to categorize your leads. Whenever you're following leads, you don't want to waste your time with those low opportunity leads. They're those very hot leads. You'd rather go, like, spend a lot of time with them, and then if there's time left, especially when you're attending like trade shows. I've attended trade shows, I think, in more than 10, maybe even more than 20 states in the US. And it's very interesting that we start planning for these trade shows like sometimes 6 months before we go. Like, we are slowly planning, we are contacting people, we are communicating with people, because you're attending a trade show that has 20,000 attendees. so you can't just go and talk to everyone. So you already have a list of people who are going to talk to you, and then there's also a list of people who are contacting you, because there are also other companies that are trying to look for business from your company, whether it's shipping business, whether it's business for like any kind of support, whether it's IT business. So that's very interesting. I think part of the problem that we have in Kenya is that the political class and the civil service, they are kind of married. We need to have continuity in the civil service, because that's where America beats a lot of people. There's continuity in the civil service where they don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. Like if you're heading this agency, you're heading it. And sometimes they may make a few political changes here and there, but the core people, the core experts, if you go to the Foreign Service, if you go to Homeland Security, there are certain core people, there are certain core skills that they want to maintain there. Not like in Kenya, ati sasa Ruto ameingia, watu wa Uhuru wote lazima watoke. Now mtu wa Ruto anaingia, someone who has zero experience, and then again you're now starting from scratch. So every year we have people starting from scratch.
Every election year.
Every election year.
Yes.
We have people starting from scratch. Now nasikia, like NHIF is being cancelled, and they're coming up with another one called social.
It's being absorbed into shift.
Yeah, it's being absorbed into shift.
It's
something social something fund. So that one is going to encompass
SHA.
So SHA is going to be the big umbrella.
So it's kind of like everyone is coming up with their new ideas, and there's lack of continuity, and this becomes very problematic. My advice to diasporans who want to invest in Kenya: be smart about it. Know your resting metabolism when it comes to investing. Unajua resting metabolism ni nini? Resting metabolism is that part of your body, and maybe Mika might explain this better. And amekuwa guru of fitness. He's lost like 200 pounds in the last 1 year. But resting metabolism is the amount of weight or the metabolism that your body is consuming while your body is at rest.
When you're at rest.
Yeah, meaning you're not exercising.
You're not exerting yourself.
So that means you're not doing anything. So that resting metabolism is like the minimum. Now, when it comes to finances, we also have a resting metabolism in America, meaning a return that you can get without any effort. And typically the resting metabolism by dollar amounts is around 10%, and it's usually tagged to the S&P 500. So anyone who has no experience in investing can buy an S&P 500 fund tomorrow, and on average, it's not going to be 10% every year. It's going to be on average in the long run. So some years you'll make 35%, some years you're going to get maybe negative 10%, but on average in the long run you'll return at 10%, and this is in dollar terms. In dollar terms, you're going to double your money every 7 years. There's something called the rule of 72, where you take the rate of return, divide by 72. That's the amount of time it's going to take to double your money. So it's going to take 7 years to double your money by doing nothing. Now, if we're going to convert that to shillings, you have to double your shillings in 5 years, because remember, when you're investing in shillings, you have to factor in the exchange rate fluctuation, which we've always lost. I know people are now looking in the short term of what has happened, and this has happened before too, but in the long run, we have always, the dollar has always appreciated against the shilling. You can go back starting 1990, you'll notice the trend.
It's always gone up.
That it's always gone up.
Yeah.
So on that resting metabolism, when you're looking at an investment opportunity in Kenya, think of something that can double that. For me, my number is 30%. Show me something that can give me an estimated 30% every year in Kenya, and I will consider it. Without that, personally, I'm not touching anything, because a lot of these things that people are touching, they end up, like either sometimes making a very low rate of return, or even in some cases making losses. I don't know, Hila, what you think about that short analysis before we go to rugby. Hila?
No, you're actually very, very, very bang on the money. One of the things that has had a ripple effect on us particularly over the last couple of months, is, like you clearly mentioned, the devaluation of the Kenyan shilling. But it then becomes quite an interesting prospect, because just the act of, if in the last 18 months you transmitted US dollars to Kenya, all of a sudden overnight, you actually have gotten that basic 30% number that you're talking about, number one. However, just to go back onto it, I'm not saying that it's all gloom and doom. If you're also just keen on trying to invest in watertight sort of options that will still yield benefits, not necessarily doubling in business or anything of the sort, I think the T-bills have become very, very, they become an option that is very attractive for overseas investment. Unfortunately, it has then had a ripple effect of almost doubling the interest rates for personal loans for the normal mwananchi back home in Kenya. So those are areas, I mean, if you want to have passive income, that you don't necessarily have to go around and worry about, what will happen. Eventually, at the point in time you want to go around and withdraw it, there's that tax that you'll also be given. But it's definitely something that can also allow you to then grow a portfolio, be able to buffer yourself as you're running the business. So like you clearly mentioned, and I don't want to take anything from your statement, which I totally agree with, it's also just about understanding what it is that you're willing to do. There are some people who would be happy being able to go around and manage a business and follow it on a day-to-day level. There's some who are just looking at a passive sort of investment stream that they can go around and make returns and, be able to go around and support a couple of things that they're doing back home.
Okay, asante sana Hila. A few comments here. Washeke is saying Kenya has high risks but also potential for high returns. You just have to find your niche and be here physically to operate. And then Gerald Oliech is saying, I think the question we should ponder is, what actual opportunity cost does Kenya still hold? The options are flooded and risk assessments are not factual because of repetition of the same opportunities. And then Udi says, I was trying to say that we need to figure out how we can make travel within Africa easier, because that's how we can grow business. 100. Benny says, as Kenyans, we walk in looking at what is on the table, while Americans come in knowing what they have in the kitchen plus the ingredients. Oh my goodness, that needs to be framed. We have to look at the big picture when negotiating with the US. The big picture gives us leverage. For example, USA military has to vacate Chagos Islands like yesterday. They need a base on the Indian Ocean. Manda base in Kenya became an option. Ruto went back with US expanding Manda base after the trip. I don't think he saw how desperate US was for a base. We could have pushed for more. I am not an expert, and I totally agree. This is exactly what I was saying. We got the US got a lot for breadcrumbs, and even some of what they'd given us before, to say your trade agreement was full of, well, we said, apana, let's give them one slice, because it seems like they're hungry for this one slice, na watakubali. Unfortunately, we are where we are. And it's also about understanding where the person you're negotiating with is desperate. The US was desperate to get a base, but we did not do that play very well.
We were mesmerized by invite.
Yeah, and by red carpets. Yeah,
and sitting on the White House chair.
Yes, and dinners and taking pictures. And then Gerald Oliech says Kenya only has a 3.5 policy and work cycle, because beyond that we fall into campaigns and politics. So the rate of return in Kenya is very unstable and cannot be worked out with any formula, with an unstable and unpredictable market, as a campaign and politics are things that stall business and returns.
I think I meant 3.5-year policy.
Or 3.5-year policies.
Work cycle, but as you think about it.
Yeah. So Afro-Jamaican says, my borders are missing and they stop depositing. Kenya is Kenyaing me. Where Afro-Jamaican has a whole story to tell. But anyway, so much for taxes na Kenya na nini.
What I want to say is, people, guys, listen. And I was thinking about this on the way here. Whether we like it or not, we have to be involved in the process. Be it the finance bill, we have to know what's going on.
Yes.
Our parents, our loved ones are there. Wakinyanyaswa, ni sisi hapa tunapigiwa SOS. Because remember, the people who have not gone back to school, there are students who have not gone back to school. There are some schools that are still shelter points because of the flooding that happened.
Yeah.
Right? There's some shule hazijapewa pesa zao. Capitation bado.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, but you have to be involved. Hapa sasa ni taxes that are affecting people. And when we did the show last, like that one of cell phones, local you import stuff to put cell phones together. Sawa wanachapwa VAT. So a phone that was costing you 8,000 is now going to cost 9,600, something like that.
Where?
So either way, you have to just go there. Mambo ya KRA na PIN. You will find people are going to lose land if you don't open up your eyes.
People need to be very careful.
You have to be because you say,
and different jurisdictions are also enforcing differently. So you need to be on top of that land rates, land rent.
Yes.
Business.
And then you have insiders who have insiders in KRA, so they are watching.
They're waiting.
They're waiting to see which land is being defaulted on, and they will be ready to sweep
and they've told the guy, if it's bigger than this in this area, let me know. The minute that there's an issue and there's a list, there's a running list.
Yeah. You go to your land that you spend so much money, like to buy, and you find someone else occupying it and building on it.
And a lot of the things you can actually do from here, meaning like once you have registered, you can go in and pay your land rates, your land rent, blah blah, all those sorts of things, because they've made it very.
Yeah. You cannot make sure that ringtone doesn't grab it while you're here.
That is true. That is true. But what I'm trying to say, at least you start that process, and you're right, Mikasi. That part of ringtone grabbing it becomes tricky. Na saa zingine hata unajua watu wanasema you can go block the inaitwaje ile green card. Sijui nini, lakini kuna wale wasewaga ndio hao they have ways. When they're coming and showing up with those jamas who are throwing you off your land. By
The
then
goons.
Imeenda.
It's a tough battle, and you have to have kahunas and know people who know other people who know some other people.
Okay.
And even then it becomes difficult.